Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to continue working on our hand. This time we're going to make the UVs for our hand so that we can get it all set up for putting materials on. We're going to actually take it out of Maya and put the hand into Quixel Mixer to do that. But we're not going to do that in this video. In this video we're going to get the UVs all set up. We're also going to have to do a little bit of correction on our models, on our model a little bit, so that when we do the UVs and are ready to set our materials up, everything works a little bit easier. It's just some minor tweaking that we need to do, and we'll take a look at that as we move along. Now, if you have been following along, this is video number 3. If you haven't been following along, there are 2 previous videos to this where we modeled the hand. And also there are other videos on putting on the Fritz 3D visualization that you can check out if you're interested in Unreal Engine, some other Maya stuff. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and take a look at everything we need to do. Okay, so here is the hand, and my head is in the way. Let's go ahead and stop that out of the way. So the hand, what I've done is I've gone in and in between videos, I've cleaned things up a little bit, put a taper on the fingers. So if you haven't done that, that might be something you want to think about. Also, our fingers aren't perfectly tapered. There are little bumps and things like that for where our knuckles are and joints. So those are types of things we may want to fix. More of a taper on the front of the finger. Same with the thumb. And then I've also kind of gone in and fixed some of the topography of the way the hand sits. Okay. So with all of that, let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that we need to continue on to fix for our UVs. I guess first, let's take a look at the UV and just kind of see what it looks like. When we go up here to UV and go to our UV editor, it looks like a big mess. Not really what we started out with. This is kind of the general cube shape, and then there's some things where we cut and connected them back up through the process of making the hand. So that's why this thing is like this, and we haven't actually done anything to create the UV itself in the correct manner. So some things we're going to do to help that happen. I'm going to go ahead and just move this out of the way for right now and go back to the hand. You can see the hand has all the cuts on it from that. I'm just going to go ahead and close my UV editor, I think, and get rid of all this. All right, so and we'll come back to that. We're going to also want to probably delete our history on the hand. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Actually, getting ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and make the corrections that I was talking about. Now, this really has to do more with the way the model sits around the tip of the fingers. And I've already done the correction on this finger here around the fingertip and the fingernail. And we'll have to do that on these other 4 or 3 fingers and the thumb as well. But what it is if we come in here and I right click and I go to face, you'll see that my fingernail all sets up pretty decently, so that as I go to cut this out for a UV to treat the nail separately and put materials on it, because we are going to have to do some stuff to get the nail to lay flat and look correct. Wrong one. It basically highlights the entire nail here, and we're able to apply one single material to it, and we're able to treat this as a separate UV. But on the one that we haven't fixed yet, we're going to run into some issues right down in here. You see, this isn't nice and clean right here. This sort of has this little jagged in here, and then also on the bottom of the nail right here, we have this really extended line down here, and we have the tighter line right up in here. So this is some stuff that's pretty easy to fix, and these are kind of the things you need to look at when you are setting up your own UVs. So let's go ahead and fix that real quick. I'll show you on this finger here, and then I'm going to pause the video and let you work on it, and I'll finish up mine as well. All right, so what I'm going to do is first I'm going to get out of the smooth mode. I'm going to hit 1, and the first thing that stands out is to fix that line, okay? So, or fix that line that goes under the nail. It looks pretty good right here, but the way the Maya uses the algorithms to calculate the curves, we're going to have to change that up a little bit and make it think a little bit differently. So what we're going to do is we're going to put an edge across here and kind of shrink that space up. So I'm going to use the cut tool right here, the multi-cut tool, And I'm going to go to my vertex so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to select this one. I'm just going to go right across over here, select that one. I'm going to hit enter. It's not perfectly straight, and that's fine. That's because of the way we set the finger up on this side. If it really is something that bugs you, you could come in and adjust it a little bit. It may change the general shape of your fingertip though, keep that in mind. But you could easily just grab this vertex and drag it up and move it up where you want it to. But if I hit 3 right now on the keyboard, you can see that it's not really going to make a difference because right up under the nail is where we're interested in, and this just kind of cuts down over here on the side of the finger, so we're perfectly fine with that. All right, so now I'm going to go back to number 1, unsmooth it. And what I want to do is I'm going to take these 3 vertices and I'm going to drop them down here all into this one. So I'm going to use my merge tool. I'm going to select it, click off in the empty space, make sure I don't actually accidentally have anything else selected because I do that quite a bit. And I'm going to bring those 2 together and I'm going to bring that one down to there. And then over here I'm going to rotate. I'm going to take a look at this. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just kind of bring all those down. And now if I hit 3 on my keyboard, hit Q to quit the tool, I should now have this working out much cleaner so that now the nail in this section here becomes one piece. And that's all there is to it to really kind of fix that up for this one. Sometimes it's a little bit more complicated, but this one just brought, all we had to do is just kind of merge in some of the vertices as you saw, and then put an additional line in. Those are some things you have to think about as you're setting up your own model as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to go in, I'm going to fix those other nails on my finger and that nail area around the fingers and the thumb. And then one other thing you might want to do is, we hadn't really talked about this, and I'll mention it real quick, is the nail shape here is kind of very squared off. Your nails may be a little bit more rounded. You may want to give it a little bit more rounded shape. That's pretty simple to do. You just select these here on the edge, hit R on the keyboard, and just kind of bring it in a little bit. Might work better if you smooth it, to kind of see what it looks like. And just kind of shape it just a little bit. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and pause and be back in a minute. Okay, so welcome back. I've got them mostly done. The last thing I'm going to do is shape this nail on my thumb. And one of the things I'm not sure I've really stressed enough through this modeling is that this gizmo here that we use for shaping, you know, we can use our move, our rotate, scale tool for our gizmo here. And right now I'm using my scale tool to bring these in closer together. But when the object has been rotated or shifted off, like the thumb has been, sometimes the gizmo will stay to the world orientation. And if I double click on this, we can see that it's on the world orientation. And even if I change it to my component or object, it'll still pretty much stay the same way. Now if I go to component, it's going to pop over here, and it's not even going to be in the right orientation from what I need. Now I'm going to go back to object for this one. But one of the things we could do is we could go in and we could modify the pivot of this by using the edit pivot and rotate it around until it kind of lines up the direction we want it to, and then we could scale it. That takes a little bit of time. The other thing we can do is we have these little squares. There's 3 of them. If we take a look here off in the kind of in the distance, there's one down here, there's a blue one here, and a red one up here. So you could find the one that's in the scale or direction that you want it to be in for that proper plane, and then you can kind of grab it and you can pull it in a little bit and use that instead. And now if I go to 3, you can see that we're shaping the nail kind of in the direction we want it to be in. And that's a little bit quicker than having to go in and change your orientation on your tool setting. And you bring that tool setting up just by double clicking on any one of these over here on the left hand side. All right, so there you go, that is done. So next thing we want to do is we're going to right click, go to object mode, and I'm going to go ahead and go up to my edit. Well, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to save. I don't want to lose all that work we just did. Then we're going to go to edit. We're going to go to delete by type. We're going to delete the history off this hand. Then we're going to go to modify, and we're going to freeze the transformation. And what that is if I bring up my channel box here, And I've frozen the transformation before, but you may have some numbers here in your translate X, Y, and Z, and your rotate. Anything that you may have been doing may have stayed there. And the history, we deleted all the history that backs up underneath the hand so that there would be multiple things that you would be seeing happening here. But we deleted that. So we're going to go to modify. We're going to go to freeze transformations, and everything should zero out. And your scale, if your scale has anything other than 1, it should now change to 1 in here. Okay? So that's what we're doing that. And the reason why we're doing that is we're giving it a 0 point in space so that when we set up our UVs, it'll work a little bit better. It won't have these kind of weird things happening to it. So let's go ahead and bring up the UV editor again. Now that doesn't change anything that happened here, okay? And what we could do, just to see what happens, is we could go to create and do automatic, okay? And you can see that it breaks our hand out, and it really has done some crazy stuff to our hand. And then none of that is what we want, okay? So what we're going to do is, if you followed along, you did automatic. You can Control Z to undo it if you want. We can also, what I like to do sometimes, go to Edge, and I'm just going to select the whole hand. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to the sew, and I'm just going to sew it together. And now it just makes this big scribbly mess. But that's okay. We're going to fix that. What we're going to do is we're going to set this hand up so that we're going to cut it so that it kind of makes sense for us to be able to lay it out flat, because that's what we're trying to do. A UV is basically the process of taking a 3D object and kind of cutting it so that's like you're taking the skin layer, the very top layer of it, and you're trying to get it to lay out as flat as possible, completely flat if you can do that. But you can't always get it perfectly flat, but you can get very close if you work at it. The reason we want to do that is because we want the textures to be nice and perfect. We don't want them to be distorted. We don't want them to look all crunched up in one spot and stretched in another spot. UVs are meant to be able to basically do this nice perfect wrap around your model so that it comes out looking the way you want it to. Now with that, we run into problems where we could end up with seams on our models. So we got to be careful about where we place these so that they kind of make sense. And we're also going to make it so that it's easier to lay this out. And a hand has multiple different types of geometry, directions laying on it. It's all over the place. You've got tapers, you've got expansion areas, you have this kind of really a cylinder that has been tapered, you got this flat surface. So we want to make sure that we try to get this as close to being flat as possible without leaving anything that's going to not really work the way we want it to. So for this, what I want to do is, and I also want to try to hide my seams, and the best way to try to hide my seams on a hand, at least what I do, now there may be plenty of other techniques out there, but what I try to do is I try to run it down along the edge here, and then along the section of the finger around here, and then all the way around this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of pick this very front piece right here on my finger. I'm going to double click on it and see how far that gets me. Okay, and I'm happy with it all the way around to here, but then it kind of gets lost over here in the thumb, and it tries to pick back up over here. What I want to do instead is I'm going to try to now, with that having been kind of laid out for us, that part works out pretty well. But what I want to do is I want to drop it so that it comes down around this way. So I'm going to deselect this whole section here. And yours may have come out completely different because your geometry may be different. The way your topography lies on your hand may end up with, you may not have the edges exactly like mine, and you may not have them coming together into places like this, so where we have some triangles and curves and things like that. So you're going to have to at least understand the concept and then apply it to your own model, okay? And that's probably about the best way that I can explain that, is just kind of follow along with my concept here and understand it and then try to apply it. Now I'm going to hit 1 on my keyboard. It's going to make me see it a little bit better this way, so as I start to find my hard edges, I can kind of dig around on that. And I know that this curved around here, so I'm going to probably be jumping back and forth, truthfully. So I'm going to go ahead and reselect that one there. I'm going to drop it down here and go this direction, kind of down around the lower part of my wrist there. And this is where we're going to start to decide which direction we want to go. That's not what I wanted to do. And I think this section right here is going to take me right across that tip of the thumb right there. So I'm going to go this way. I'm going to try to double click it and see if it'll select it. It did. Okay. And now let me see. What I want to do is I also want to take advantage of this section here and try to get it to go right across in this kind of hidden area down in here, which is going to take me off my main line for where the finger is right here for the pointing finger. But I'm going to go ahead and do it here. Let's see here. Nope. I'll go back and deselect the parts of the finger I don't want to have selected here in a second. All right, so it's kind of jagged right in here. Maybe it would make more sense to come up in here, so it would be hidden in the joint here with this kind of part coming up there. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, I'm going to deselect that one I've just put in there. I'm going to put it here, here, and maybe we got to go, because that, I don't want it to go that direction. Maybe we got to go that way. See what that looks like. Not quite getting it where I wanted to go, but I think it's close enough. I think that is probably going to work all right. All right, so that is our first kind of what we're doing is we're taking the finger and the hand and we're separating them out. And now I'm looking at it. I'm also going to cut the fingers off. So by doing this, I'm just wondering if I've added more work to myself. I'm going to cut them here. But I'm still going to need to lay them flat. We may kind of stitch them back together in one section, but it's not going to be this side, or maybe the other side if we do that. All right, so let's go ahead, and with that, we're going to pull up the tool again, if I can find it. That was not it. There it is. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and cut those. Okay, so now I've cut them, and this is what I have. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click. I'm going to go to my UV shell. I'm going to select one of those scribbly lines, pull it off this side over here, and this is the other one. So if I take a look at it, I've got a top and a bottom to my hand. We can go ahead and kind of unfold it, see what it looks like. It's not going to be pretty, but we'll do that real quick. So we can go ahead and right-click, go down to my modify. There we go, and unfold right there. Okay. And do the same thing over here. We also have this tool section open over here. Now, nothing stayed within the scale that it's supposed to stay in, and we'll fix that later. But you can see right now that the hand is definitely all kind of jumbled up, facing all different directions. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Now, one of the things you need to make sure as you're doing this process is if you start to find some bad geometry, you need to go in and fix it and then redo your UV part of the UV that you found the bad geometry in. Because when we do the auto layout to kind of get the scale and hold everything the way it's supposed to be, we may end up with some issues. Now, there's a way to work around that. We can eyeball the scale and get it pretty darn close by using the grid system. So, but we'll worry about that in a bit. And I guess I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if I click on the grid right there, so the little squares. We can take a look and we'll see that the squares are different sizes, and that's because the UVs are different sizes, and that's going to be a problem when we want to put our material on it. We want to make sure it all stays the same. So we're going to run into some issues with that. And then if we take a look at it, we also see we have a lot of stretching, so we got a lot of work left to do. Not a lot. It won't take that long. All right, so let's go ahead and turn that off. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and I'm going to separate these fingers. That'll help the hand, the back of the hand and the palm lay a little flatter. And it'll also help us with setting these fingers up. And we're also going to need to come in here and we're going to need to separate the fingernails. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on one finger. And I'm going to do the full process, lay that one out. And then I'm going to pause so this video doesn't get terribly long, and let you work on your own, and then I'll come back in and show you what I did. If I come across any issues, I'll discuss those at that time, but one finger to the next should be pretty much the same, and then the thumb will also do the same thing. We're going to actually cut it off, but we'll probably need to slice it down along here and bring it back around so that this piece is actually separate, because it's going to get bunched up and really not lay out very flat. And I'll deal with the thumb separately, and we'll talk about that. So we'll do these 4 fingers, and then I'll come back and we'll do the thumb. All right, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to hit 1 on my keyboard so I can see my edges a little bit clearer. I'm going to double click on this. We'll start with the pinky. We'll just do that because it's on the outside. We're going to make sure that it goes all the way around. And I don't believe it did. Now it should be all the way around. You can always hit 4 on your keyboard, and that brings up the wireframe, and you can see the lines and the edges, the vertices a little bit clearer without the model being in the way. Just to double check to make sure you got everything that you need to get cut or selected, and that's what I want there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that. So I'm going to hit the cut button. And let's see here. If we take a look at the UV, we'll see that that is indeed what's happened. We've cut the UV for the pinky apart from the 2 models. And we'll come back and we'll talk about layout later. But for right now, we'll just leave everything the way it is. Okay, so now let's see here. We got that done. Hit 5 on my keyboard if I want to see my model back again. You can also hit 6 if you have any shading applied to it, any shaders, but right now we don't, so that's not a big issue. So those should be laid out, but what we need to do is we're going to need to address the fingertip, okay? And we're going to do that in the smooth mode. So I'm going to put it in smooth mode so I can see where everything's kind of laying at, because I need to cut this fingertip, the fingernail off of the finger. I'm going to leave the skin, so the cuticle part of the finger, which is this kind of curved area right up in here, and then this section right down here on the bottom of that is where this nail material is going to be. I'm going to cut that all the way around underneath here. Okay, so I'm going to select it here, go over to here, hold the shift and double click. Hopefully it selected everything around for me. Then I'm going to select this one. Here, here, and here. Okay, so now that should all be highlighted. I'm going to cut that. Okay. And just double check, make sure it looks right. Okay. The other thing we're going to need to do is we're also going to need to come out with a way to have the nail piece here come out forward, because this is going to be kind of tucked in there if we don't cut that out. So first, let's go ahead and come back over here, right click, go to UV shell, and we can select that nail piece. We're going to pull that out. We want to keep these in order with our fingers so we know what part of the finger it goes to, because we're going to lay these out so they make sense here in a few minutes. All right, so with that, And if I unfold this one, so there's another spot to unfold is right here. We can unfold it. It doesn't look like it really changed all that much. And let's just see how this looks. Let's go ahead and grab the face. I'm just going to grab that face there and see if it's laid this out decent for me. And actually, not bad, but let's see what it looks like if we turn our little checkerboard on again. Remember the little checkerboard right up here? Turn that on and just make sure that it's not... All right. We did unfold it. Got a little bit of this kind of stretching and misshapenness going on right in this area right here. So what we probably need to do is alleviate that. So I'm going to hit 1 on my keyboard. I'm going to turn that checkerboard off so I can see, so you can see what I'm doing here. And what I want to do is deal with this front section here. Okay. So I'm going to go back to edge. I'm going to just kind of click off in space. And I think what we can do is we can select it here because it's not connected here. So what we want to do is we want to be able to have it kind of lay out a little bit flatter. I'm going to select that one there. So on either side of the top part of the nail there. What we want to do is try to have it so that this can unfold like a cardboard box. Right now, it's sort of crunched up in there, and I think that's what's causing some of our stretching issues. So by selecting both of those, if we cut this, we should be able to pull this section up, and let's just see if that works. So we go ahead and hit cut, go back to UV shell, and we're going to unfold it. Now we've got this kind of laying out in front here. If we turn the checkerboard back on, it cleaned that up. There we go. So now we've got some nice, neat little squares. Don't worry about them going off in different directions like this. They're angled. We're going to move things around anyway. They're not going to be perfect. We just want to make sure that the squares themselves look like squares. And there is a little bit of an issue still under here, but this is a section that's not going to really be seen most likely, and it's minor. So we'll just leave that alone. And the way we're going to texture it anyway probably wouldn't even be noticeable. So we're going to go ahead and undo the checkerboard. So that is the first nail, and that is the first finger. Let's just go ahead and double check the finger and see how that looks. That's not where you're supposed to go. Okay, so let's take a look at the finger. Let's take a look at all the squares around it, making sure everything looks squared. And you can see right here on our fingertips, we do have some little shape stuff going on here, right around where the cuticles are, at the front of the nail. But I'm inclined to leave that alone because overall the finger looks pretty good. And we could get to a point where we're just totally cutting it up for no reason. I guess what we could do is right here, we could take a look at that finger, and we could, and we probably should. So right here, we're going to cut it here on both sides so that this fingernail has the ability to kind of, or the fingertip has the ability to come out and lay flat. And we're going to do that. I'll just go ahead and show you. So we're going to go here, turn the grid off, we'll checkerboard off so we can see it. So we're going to go there, there, over here. We're going to leave those two together. We're going to select that one. I'm going to select this one. And we got to be careful because if we go too far, we're going to end up cutting this whole tip off. So we're going to cut that one there. And we're going to do the same thing on this side over here. All right, and now if we go back in, we're going to cut those. We're going to see how this looks. We may end up putting it back together. I may not like it, but let's take a look. All right. So here is the part of the finger with the nail. We've cut those already, I believe. Just hit cut again just to make sure. Now I'm going to right click, go to UV shell, and I'm going to unfold this again. And it should be able to lay flatter there. And let's find the other end of the pinky here. And we're going to unfold that. Okay. And it kind of did this. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the checkerboard again, just to see how that looks. Okay. And that does look better. Yeah. Now we're going to end up with some little seams there, but again, it's at the very tip of the finger, and those little seams may not even be noticeable. And it also depends on the material we're using too. So for our textures, or our textures that we're using for our materials. Anyway, so there, that's what we're going to do for all the fingers. So we're going to go through, cut them, separate the nail, alleviate the front pressure on both the nail and on the fingertips, and then we'll come back to the thumb and do the thumb together. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and let you go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm back and I've got all of these done. You know, I probably could have done the thumb too. Yeah, so I'm going to pause real quick. I'm going to jump in. We're going to get the thumb. I'm going to go back and do the thumb, since the thumb nail is separate from that anyway. And then I'll come back in and we'll do the actual cut for the thumb itself and talk about that a little bit. So I'm going to pause again. Let's do the thumbnail and then I'll come back. Okay, so now all the fingernails are taken out and all of the fingers have been separated and laid out. The only thing we need to do now is the thumb. And if we take a look at the UV, we can kind of see where there is this natural spot where we can kind of just come along and separate the thumb so that we can lay it out a little bit smoother. And on the top, so we're going to go ahead and jump over onto the model, and we're going to do that. Probably be a little bit easier to visualize anyway. All right, so with the thumb, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set it up so that this section right here can be given the chance to lay out flat. Okay, and that might mean that we have to bring it down into this part of this finger here and kind of work this around like this. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to highlight it out first and just kind of see what that might look like, because this area is going to get bunched up if we're not careful. We're also probably going to have to do an alleviation cut in here so it can lay flat. We may have to separate it, but we'll see. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go, I think, this direction. Okay, nope. Let's try that again. Just have to do it one at a time. I'm going to hit quit, hit the Q key to quit my other tool. And let me see, I think I want to go, do I want to go this way? I think I'm going to take it back this direction. Let's see if I go, cut that. That should allow that to lay flat that way. And that should be a start for the top. And then for the bottom, this. No. We'll go this way. Right down the center there. And then right back up here. Okay, we're going to cut that spot there. And so what I did was I kind of split it down along here. Again, you got to keep in mind what your seam is going to do, but you also have to think about stretching and kind of deforming the texture itself as we put it on here. So let's see what that looks like when we lay this out. Okay, so I got those there. And we may have to slice it just a little bit more. Move this over here. I'm going to unfold that one. And I'm going to unfold this one. And see what that has done. By turning on the little squares. What we want to see is if we have any stretched or deformed shaped squares. Everything should look like a nice, perfect square. Okay, now with all of that, let's go ahead and turn off the squares. And over here, there are some tools that are going to help us determine if there's a distortion. So this one right here is the UV distortion. It identifies areas where there is some distortion. And areas that are white are not distorted. Areas that are blue to red are more distorted. And you can see that right in here with the fingers, in between the fingers here on both sides. And then back here by the back of the palm, there's a little bit going on back here. And I think that's because of the way I cut this here. If we take a look at the model, you can see that I just sliced it down here and I kind of forced this thing right in here to happen. So what we want to do is probably cut right here to allow this to lay out more flat. So we're going to cut that. And then select the hand again. And we're going to go ahead and unfold the hand. And now that we have the fingers separated too, it's going to treat the front of the hand a little bit differently. So let's take a look and see what that did for us. It did clean that up. It looks like those parts of the hand are good and gotten okay. So let's go ahead and select this one, and we're going to unfold this one too. And it looks pretty decent. I don't see any more distortion. Let's go ahead and turn that off. So we just click on it again, turn it off. This one right here tells you if your UVs are backwards or laying the right direction. So these blue is good and red is upside down, so reversed. So you're seeing the inside instead of the outside of the material. All right, so let's just take one more look at this. Okay, and now what we got to do is we got to get the scale correct, okay? A couple ways we could do this, but since we need to get it down here into the 1 by 1, so 0 to 1 down here, and that's the center section. If you zoom in on it, you can see this is the only spot where we actually see the grid right now. And if you look at it, there's a green and a red line on the Y and X axis. This is where we need to get this entire UV to fit, okay? So, of course, I hesitate to do auto layout because we may lose track of which finger, thumb belongs to which one. So, but they're all going to get the same treatment, and we can play around to discover which one's which and fix that here. So let's go ahead and select the entire thing. We're going to go to modify. We're going to go to layout. I'm going to open the option box. Okay. We're going to use the Unfold 3D, see how this works. I'm usually using Legacy, but we'll see. There's a fixed non-manifold geometry, which might be something we need to think about. That may cause some issues. We're going to do it at 2048 by 2048. Packing iterations, we're going to do 1. Pack together, non-overlap. Shell padding right now is 1 pixel by 1 pixel. Tile padding, I'm going to put both of these at 9, so we have a little bit more space between them. Oops, that's not 9. That's 9. All right, so let's see how this looks. Maybe hopefully I don't have any bad geometries. We'll find out. All right, so now it put it all down in there. And I'm going to rearrange this, okay? But the biggest thing was to get the scale correct, and it also puts it kind of down in there where I need it. So otherwise that all over there. But anyway, yeah, so let's go ahead, and now if we take a look at the squares, we turn them back on. The squares on our hand, all parts of our model should be equal, okay? Now, if you had a geometry issue when you did this, it will give you an error and it won't do this for you. And that's because you have a non-manifold geometry errors. So that means that there could be multiple things wrong with it, which I can't obviously diagnose without seeing your model, and that's not going to be possible. So unless, of course, you're in my classroom, so then I can come over and take a look, and we can talk about how to fix non-manifold geometry. And that's not really what this lesson is about. But if this doesn't work for you, what you could do is another workaround is to select the parts of your model that are the wrong scale. So if it's all the top hand is different than the bottom part of the hand, select all the top pieces and scale them until the squares match the same size as the squares on the other part of your hand, so the top and the bottom, right? And then once you got the squares close or correct to the same size, then select the entire model and scale it down until it fits down into the 0 and 1 box right here, okay? So that's a workaround so that you can move forward and get to the texturing piece of it. The non-manifold geometry, that just comes with practice, and there is a cleanup tool that you can use. You can look that up. I'm sure somebody has a lesson on how to use the cleanup tool, but the cleanup tool really kind of messes with your geometry. I don't like using it other than to help me identify if I can't find where I have a mistake. There is a feature to it where it will identify where the error is, and then I can go in and decide how I want to fix it. So a couple different approaches to it, but you could use the cleanup tool. And again, I'm not going to get into that, but that tool is up here under mesh, I believe, and it's under cleanup, the option box, okay? All right, so now that we've got our UVs laid out, the last thing I want to do is go ahead and get our pieces laid in the right positions, and then I guess this is the second to the last thing, and then the last thing is we're going to apply two materials. We're going to apply a material to the hand, the skin parts, and we're going to apply a separate material to the nail pieces, okay? So let's go ahead and kind of start laying this out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. I don't need it anymore. And let's go ahead and scale this down since it's so big. And I don't need it to be quite so big. So I can actually see my model while I'm doing this. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my thumb pieces, which I know are my thumb pieces. Set those over here to the side for a minute. That's my other thumb piece. And my thumbnail is that one right there. All right. Okay. And this finger, that finger go together. Oops, I forgot to find the nail for that finger. Let's find the nail for this finger. That's the nail. And you know, this is just me being fussy. You can certainly do this multiple ways. You don't have to necessarily do what I'm doing right now. I just like to keep things together. Maybe it's, I don't know, the obsessive compulsive thing in me. I have no idea, but certainly multiple ways to do this, and making sure everything is nice and neat and laid together so it looks like a hand and you know where everything's at doesn't necessarily, I'm not sure that there's a benefit to it, I guess is what I'm trying to say, but I'm not sure that there isn't either. So yeah, so you can decide, I guess, how you want to do this, but I am going to go through this process real quick of getting everything kind of laid out here. And what I'm going to do is, instead of wasting your time while you're sitting here watching it, I'm going to go ahead and pause. I'm going to come back and show you what my layout looks like, but you kind of get the idea. I'm setting all the pieces apart. I've identified them here off of my model, and I'll show you what the finished product looks like here in a minute. Okay, so I'm back, and this is what I came up with. Again, top of the hand, bottom of the hand, thumb, different fingers, and then the fingernails from the pointer finger, middle finger, pinky, ring finger, and then the nails that go correspond to it, and then the thumbnail up here in the middle. I decided to keep them up towards the top so that it's easier to identify them because they're going to have a different material assigned to them. So with all that done, just one more check to make sure. I'm going to hit the little square, make sure everything looks good. Okay. My thumbnail looks a little funky to me. I may come in and make an adjustment on my structure here of my geometry. I think it's kind of at an angle. I don't think it came out right. But that's a modeling thing, and I'll fix that on the side. But for the most part, it looks pretty good, and I think it's all laid out. So that's that piece of it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to assign materials to it. And what I want to do is I'm going to assign all the same material to the skin parts of the hand. So I'm going to select them here, right-click in the modeling window. I'm going to assign a new material, and this is going to be an Arnold shader. So I'm going to use an AI standard surface for this one, and it's going to pop up over here. And what I want to do, it disappeared on me. So here are these two arrows. I'm going to right click on this arrow, and all of this tweaking I did is still in here. So I think what I'm going to do first, select my object completely, and I'm going to edit, delete by type, history again, and all of that should go away now. So now with this hand selected, I can find my AI standard surface. So if I right click on this arrow again, you see everything else went away. Right here's my AI standard surface. I'm going to just call this one M underscore hand. I'll just call it hand, because the other one's going to be called fingernail. So this will be good enough. All right, so we're going to give this one a name. We're going to call it hand. I also like to, for my output node, I also like to go in and change that so it matches. So M underscore hand. That way, depending on the system that you're using or the software you're using, both of these are covered, and you know what is what's supposed to be what. All right, so now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to select the nails. So I'm going to go back to UV shell. Select these 4 nails, or 5 nails rather. There's 5 of them. Okay, and with those selected, kind of the same thing. Right click, assign new material. It's going to be an Arnold AI standard surface, and this time it decided to stay up. So right here at the very top, I'm going to make sure I have my AI standard surface 1 selected. That way the naming convention stays consistent. I'm going to underscore and call this fingernail. If I can type, it'd be even better. Okay, call it my fingernail. What we can do is we can just highlight this, Control C to copy it, make sure you hit Enter to lock that in, and then we're going to change that other node, which that's that tab right there, or it's this little box right here. Okay, there you go. So our output node now matches, and we're good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save everything. Okay. And where are we at here? Okay, so that pretty much does it for this lesson. We're gone through, we got our UV set up. In the next lesson, we're going to export this model. I'll go through the process of turning it into an OBJ or FBX for export so that we can put it into Quixel Mixer, or if you want, you could even take it into Substance Painter and use Substance. I'm going to use Quixel because it's available to everybody and it's free. So you can also get student versions of Substance Painter, but once you're no longer a student, it's no longer free. The caveat with Quixel, though, is it's free as long as you're ending up inside of Unreal Engine. So if you're going to do a project with Unity or something else like that, then you'll have to either pay for a license for Quixel or pay for a license for Substance Painter or come up with a different software as well, even Photoshop maybe. But anyway, we'll go through the process of texturing this in the next video. If you have any questions, please shoot me a message in the comments. If you like what you saw, please like it. And again, please subscribe to Putting on the Fritz 3D Visualization. And anyway, yeah, and I'll see you next time.